Welcome to the Leadership School podcast. I'm your host, leadership and self-care coach, Kyla Cofer. Here at the Leadership School, you'll hear leaders from around the world sharing their stories and expertise on how to lead with balance and integrity. Our goal? Teach you how to be an extraordinary leader. Hello, leaders. Welcome back to Leadership School. I'm your host, Kyla Cofer. Thank you for joining me here for another episode. I really appreciate you listening and tuning in. So I wanted to talk for a second about compassion, because I hear us talking about compassion in a lot of conversations. I just got off of a conversation with a friend. We were talking about compassion, and I realized, we talk about this a lot. There are literal books written. I know that Henry Nouwen's got a book called Compassion. We talk a lot about it a lot. And when you're studying leadership, you can go on get bachelor's, master's, PhD in leadership if you want. And in those courses, you're going to learn leadership theory, organizational theory, psychology in leadership. You're going to learn ethics in leadership. You're going to learn how to lead in different types of circumstances. And we talk about a lot of those things here at the Leadership School podcast. Kind of like an educational platform. I try and educate on different theories and methods and ideas and the way people are doing things, different elements of people's experiences, things that you might encounter in a leadership role. We're trying to approach all of these different things. And I've noticed that one thing that I value personally is compassion, having compassion for other people. But also, I'm starting to really see a lot of conversations around having compassion for yourself. And I think this is a topic that has really started to come up, especially during COVID. And as we're seeing the Great Resignation, people are quitting their jobs. And a lot of that is, I believe, is because we're starting to have this compassion for ourselves, where we realize that my life matters, how I go about my life matters, what I'm willing to put up with matters. And I think it just all comes down to the way we care for ourselves. And I believe compassion is the caring of others, but also the caring for yourself. So what does it look like to really have compassion for yourself? And this might be veering off topic a little bit, but I really don't think that it is, because I think that when we are leading other people, that we're leading people, and you can't successfully bring other people into a story without having compassion for them. But if we don't start with that compassion for ourselves, it's really hard to spread that out with other people. And so I just watched Dan Harris. He just released a really great TED Talk that I really encourage you to go watch. It's really interesting. It's based on his personal story. He was a former news anchor, and he's written a book now called 10% Happier. And he now no longer is a news anchor after having a panic attack on live television, where it really changed his whole life and his perspective. He got into meditation, started meditating a lot, and now coaches, trains, teaches on meditation and the value of meditation and why he believes it's valuable. And it's a really great story. So please go watch this. It's on YouTube. It's a TED Talk, but it's on YouTube. So you can go out and find that. Dan Harris. So one thing he's really brings up in here is a topic that I hear every single guru, to use that term, talk about. Every single person who's talking about making some sort of internal personal change, who maybe Jay Shetty, who's been a former monk. Every single person who talks about personal development, personal change, making some personal, we talk about the individual and how we need to change ourselves before we change other people. And we need to lead ourselves before leading other people. Every single leadership conversation, motivational, inspirational speaker that I have listened to over the years always boils down to having compassion for yourself, an understanding for yourself, this love for yourself. Maybe it's really love is the word, but when I'm thinking of this word compassion, it's the caring for, the having grace for, the patience with, the understanding for, the empathy for. It's all of those things that encompasses the care of. So this TED Talk with Dan Harris, I thought was really great, because he, in a very humorous way, talks about putting your hand over your heart and acknowledging that you're okay, that you're safe, that we've got you, that I've got you, that this is all going to be okay. And I think as leaders, we tend to be so focused on accomplishing the goal, so focused on the people who are expecting something of us, that we forget to reflect back on ourselves and give ourselves some space, give ourselves some much needed compassion to say, I feel you. You're hurting right now, or you're stressed right now, or this is hard. You're overwhelmed. You don't know how to make this decision. This is hard to do. You totally just effed up, messed up, made this huge big mistake. You are in a tight spot. You're tired, you're angry, you're worried, you're joyful, all of these types of emotions that can come into just our lives. We don't lead. I've said this before. You've heard me say it before. We don't lead in a vacuum. We lead is part of our lives. Our lives have ups and downs and backs and forths and twists and turns. And Dan Harris draws this, and I think it's on a sticky note. He draws a toilet pattern. We have this toilet pattern or this spiral in our lives where just things are back and forth and up and down. We don't have this steady way about our lives because that's just not how life works. Like, there are changes, the seasons, they shift and they change, and the wind patterns and the weather. You never know what is going to change in our life. When we can come from a place of having compassion and understanding for ourselves, we could put our hand over our heart and say, I've got you. You've got this. You're going to be okay. I've been actually practicing that a little bit more this week. And it's a practice that I've practiced for a decade now, and noticed how it's so funny how I always have, like, every few months I'll have this like revelation where I just think that, oh, this is it. This is going to be the door that I walk through that just totally changes everything about my life. This one idea that I had, this one moment, this revelation, this thing I now understand about myself or about the world is just going to finally click, and everything's going to be different. But it's never once happened. What happens is that we have little moments that help us think a little bit differently. And 10 years ago, when I was starting to finally, for the first time in my life, practice having compassion towards myself and empathy for myself and love for myself, that was just the beginning of this long journey. I didn't even start 10 years ago. This is like 20 years that I've been doing this work, and it just builds little by little. When we grow little by little, everything in our journeys, in our life that happens here and now, it's just little by little. And if we go about thinking that there's going to be this one great big reveal and this great big aha moment and everything's going to change and just be perfect and better and I've got this, we're going to probably be spending a lot of time disappointed. And I have, anyways, spent a lot of time thinking, oh, I thought that was it. I just thought that I had it, and why has nothing changed? But in reality, something has changed, because little by little, we do grow and we change and we think differently. And life is this process, this journey. And when we can have compassion for ourselves and realize that, I think we end up just living a life with a little bit more ease. And the stressful situations don't end up being so stressful. The long, hard days don't end up being so long and hard. The big, giant, important mega goal, it's still there, but it's not so life or death. When we can give ourselves compassion, we're also giving ourselves the space to just live our lives. And what's the beauty of that is that the more we practice that on ourselves, the more it really just spills out and goes to everybody else. And when we're leading other people, that's what we want. We want people to have compassion for themselves. We want to have compassion for the people that we're leading. So when we start by doing that internal work, it starts reflecting out of us towards the people that we're leading. So one thing I want us to practice is, yes, having more compassion for yourself. Go and watch this TED Talk with Dan Harris and do the practices that he says in there. I don't need to repeat all of that and to give you his TED Talk, because he's so brilliant with it and he gives such great advice. But I really want you to practice for this week. Doing some internal reflecting, asking yourself, am I having compassion for myself right now? Am I giving myself the type of respect that I give to my neighbor, to my mom, to my friend, my coworker, my sister, my brother, whoever, all the people in your life, that the people that you respect, the people that you see as mentors, that you would give compassion for in any circumstance? Are you giving that same compassion to yourself? I'm not just talking about the big things, because there are a lot of times we have big things in life, but the big things, they're not the everyday. They're not always the everyday. sometimes they carry with us in the everyday. But the everyday is this moment of, how am I going to get through this next project? I don't know how to answer that one email. I feel a little bit insecure and I have some self-doubt about how to respond to that employee. Do we keep this person? Do we let them go? Do we keep that client or do we let them go? How do we show up? How do we lead people first? How do we give people grace when they need it? They've already taken all their sick leave. How do we offer them more when we still need to get the job done? How do we X, Y, Z? Start with the small things and and try this every day for a week. I want you to try every single day for a week, that at least once a day. Well, be better to do it all day long, but once a day, give yourself once a day, and pick a time. So is it going to be when you wake up in the morning? Is it going to be when you go to bed at night? Is it going to be when you're eating your lunch, doing the dishes, before you open your email? Where you take this slow breath in and slow breath out, and you say to yourself, I matter. I can have compassion for myself. I'm okay. It's going to be okay. And I want you to be happy, healthy, whole. What does it look like to have compassion for yourself? And then how does it feel once you start giving more compassion to yourself? How does that affect your relationships? How does that affect your work? How does that affect your leadership? And just start to notice these little tiny things. When we start to weave these little practices and habits into our life, how is it going to change the way that we show up as leaders? We want to be extraordinary leaders. Start by believing that we're extraordinary. You guys have a great week. Hey, thank you so much for listening. If you've liked what you heard and you want some more tools and resources to help you on your journey, go check out kylacofer.com/free stuff.